All right, let's turn to New York now, where tension's still very high following that police-related death of 43-year-old Eric Garner. You all know the video. He died last month after being put in an apparent chokehold by an NYPD officer on Staten Island. Garner accused of selling loose cigarettes. Staten Island DA Dan Donovan announced Tuesday that evidence in the investigation will be presented to a grand jury, which will convene next month. And so you know, Reverend Sharpton is organizing a protest on Staten Island on Saturday. He is calling for the arrest of the officer in the Garner case, as well as the death involving the 18-year-old Michael Brown, as we spoke about before, in Missouri. First off, and I'm going to start with you on this one, Dan. How much, if at all, does the events unfolding in Missouri impact what happens in Staten Island? I know it shouldn't, okay, right. But if you're Dan, if you're DA right now in Staten Island, Mr. Donovan, are you looking over there saying, maybe if I was on the fence, I'm going to go one way rather than the other?
You can't let that interfere with your thinking at all. And remember, before the events in Missouri...
But they're human beings. It has to.
But as a prosecutor, you have to be laser focused on the facts and the law. And remember, before this happened in Missouri, there was already a lot of press, a lot of media scrutiny over how this would be handled in New York. So I think even before Missouri, there was a lot of public pressure, and the DA, any prosecutor, has to put that aside and look at the facts. You're talking about a person who died in police custody. That's always tragic. And then you're talking about possibly prosecuting a police officer or multiple police officers. So you have to be very diligent, focus on the facts and the law, and the outcome will be what the facts and the law lead to.
Bill, strategically, does the DA's office make a decision how much they're going to choose to communicate with the media, to use the media as a tool to get out where they are in the investigations? They can do it on their timeline so they don't look like they're being forced by Sharpton's hand, let's say, to move in one way or another.
Well, I think Donovan has done about all he should do. In other words, you basically give the public some assurance by saying, look, we're presenting a grand jury, we're convening a grand jury, we're going to start this next month. The one thing the prosecutor can't do is he can't basically hold weekly press conferences to describe for the media the ebb and flow of the grand jury investigation. First of all, by statute, grand jury proceedings are secret. So he's really not supposed to comment about grand jury proceedings at all. But at least to say the investigation is continuing, I think that's not a bad idea.
From the other side, you've been on both sides of this, and you've been involved yourself with high-profile civil rights cases. If you're representing the Garner family, how do you use the media to communicate either your displeasure over the pace of the investigation, whether you think you're going to be getting a fair investigation? How do you do that?
Well, I mean, again, I want a full and fair investigation, and I want to know what the facts are. And if I'm representing the Garner family also, I need to know all of the facts, because if the facts aren't what I think they are, then I'm going to be setting that family up for disappointment.
I hear you, Mayor, but how do you use guys like me? Let's be honest.
Well, I think that really what we want to do is you want to have a full investigation. You want to make sure, though, and one of the issues is that the grand jury is secret, as Bill said. And that means that we never know what witnesses necessarily testified, what evidence was submitted to that grand jury. We don't know the intonation of your voice. We don't know facial expressions that send messages to the grand jurors that are not reflected on a transcript. So I want to make sure that all of the information is presented. I want to make sure that there aren't witnesses out there who don't get called and don't find their way into the grand jury. And I want to make sure that the district attorney's office has their heart in the investigation. That's basically what I would like to say.
There's one thing that should be pointed out. There is grand jury secrecy rules. Those rules only apply to the prosecutors and to the grand jurors and to the stenographers. There is no rule that says that a witness who goes before the grand jury is not permitted to disclose publicly what he was asked in the grand jury.
So they can walk right on the steps after they testify?
They can go out on the press conference every day. There could be cameras sitting outside the grand jury, the courthouse, waiting for these people to come out and say, were you just in the grand jury? Are you willing to talk to us? Grand jury secrecy rules do not apply to the witnesses because they have a First Amendment right.
Though you generally don't want your witnesses going out and speaking to the media right after they've testified in the grand jury.
No, but I'm saying witness is free to do it if he or she chooses to.
Right. Now, Saturday, there's going to be, I don't know how large, but there certainly is going to be a large presence in Staten Island. They're not going to walk over the Verrazzano. They worked out a deal. The part of the Brown family, maybe not the parents, but part of the Brown family will also have a presence there. If you're the Garner family, would you like raised voices and a lot of visible anger right there, or would you like to see more of a presence? What do you think is in the... from a Garner family who's looking for the prosecution of at least the officer, if not the group of officers, what is the best optics that they want to come out of Saturday? And optics are a part of this, let's be honest.
I think they'd want to see an outcry for justice, without it breaking down, obviously in terms of conduct, the way that people carry themselves out. But I think they really want to show the public that in the Black community, there's been a total erosion. And this is something that affects the Latino community as well. I see it with my immigrant clients. Very little trust for the police, fear of the police. No real hope that there's going to ever be justice. I feel for the mother in the Brown case, because in my years as a public school teacher, I know what it takes to get a teenager through the school system ready to go to college. This man was, we have the videotape, right? He's being manhandled by the police. It recalls the days of Anthony Baez in the 80s, who was, killed by illegal chokehold. And so I think that what the family will want to see is an outcry for justice, a demand that there be transparency and a full investigation.
And to that point, just so I don't run out of time, Dan, less than 30 seconds, give me a prediction. What happens next in Staten Island?
Well, they'll investigate this in the grand jury, and
Do you think they're getting an indictment?
I don't know all the facts, so I can't say that he should be indicted or that he will be indicted or that he won't, because I don't know all the facts. I don't know the officers and what their accounts are going to be. So we really have to wait and see. But a grand jury will investigate this, and that's what should happen.
And if there's no indictment, do you think the feds do get involved?
It's going to be tough because, as I said before, they could investigate civil rights violations, but that's different than a homicide investigation. They'd have to show it was based on race, the way the officer acted.
Gentlemen, madam, thank you all very much here. All the time that we have for tonight. Thank you a lot. We will see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. as always, right here on RFL.